And we're live. Hello, Data Storytellers. Today on the show, I have with me Julio Peironcely. Julio, it's good to have you on the show. How you doing, sir?
Hi, Laszlo. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So today we're going to have a conversation about all things data. So Julio is the Global Director of Insights and Analytics Cycles and Procurement over at Danone. And we are going to explore his journey as a data leader, and also would like to understand his take on the industry today and get some of his personal recommendations to aspiring data leaders as well. So first of all, Julio, looking at your LinkedIn, you do have an interesting background. I would like to find out about some stuff here. Like, for example, you're the founder of Next Scientist. It sounds very interesting. We can dive in. But first of all, how did you get into the data world?
So, yeah, that's it's been quite some years already. I got acquainted with data science and with machine learning during my PhD. So I was doing a PhD in Leiden University in the Netherlands that was combining computer science, biology, and chemistry. And I needed to work on data sets of molecules and try to predict some properties. And I used machine learning for that. And I like that combination of coding, algorithms, data, and try to answer questions. So I really enjoyed that kind of detective work with data. So after the completion of my PhD, I decided to keep doing the same, but in an industry setting. So I started working as a consultant, hands-on data scientist for Deloitte.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's how I got involved in this field.
So what is Next Scientist? I just can't take my eyes off of it. No, I have to know.
Yes, it's a little venture I started, I believe, in 2012 when I was completing my PhD. It was just started as like a blog. It was a blog to support other PhD students in the journey, which tends to be very, it's quite rough. So just to share advice, things that work for me, try to get other guest writers to share their story and try to support those students out there. So it was a little venture. First was for fun, and then I tried to monetize a little bit. And now it's dormant because I moved a bit out of that world.
Okay, gotcha. So just reading through your LinkedIn. So you started at Deloitte as a data scientist, as a consultant. Then you were a data scientist senior consultant at Microsoft. Next up was VodafoneZiggo. So for our North American listeners, VodafoneZiggo is one of the biggest telecoms providers. Vodafone is one of the biggest telephone providers, telecoms in Europe. And then Ziggo is the more local Benelux arm of that, and that was a merger, if I'm not mistaken. And I see something interesting here. So you are also the founder of DataFitter. DataFitter. So is it basically a consultancy? You help large organizations with what?
So it was after I stopped working at Microsoft. I started freelancing, and I just incorporated. So I created my own business. And from here, I could offer advisory services to companies that wanted to, at the beginning, to coordinate the data teams, to have like a leader that was half hands-on, half taking care of the team. And then progressively, I started doing some consulting projects for companies that wanted to start with data, start with AI, find the first use cases, but also sometimes just say, okay, where am I today? I want to reach here. What do I need to do? Right. So do a bit of that advisory into becoming data-driven, data-enabled.
Okay, gotcha. So I see that you joined Danone at 2019. So in 2019, we were actually working with quite a few of your colleagues at Danone. Do you know Aske van der Werf? I think she left since, but she was involved.
No, I don't have the pressure.
Yeah. So how did you start working at Danone?
Well, it's a similar story. I work for Procurement, which is a global function at Danone, because Danone needs to source a lot of the materials we use to create our products, our dairy products, plant-based, water, special nutrition, infant nutrition. So procurement is big spend, and Danone had reached the size where they thought we need to revamp our procurement function, professionalize it, and we need to equip it with data and analytics. So my mission was to come and say, okay, we're changing everything, the operating model, the teams, the ways of working, the processes, the technology, see how data can contribute to this, right? So my mission was to define the processes for data, the teams, the skills, the type of people, the projects we're going to do. And after designing, it was time to implement, right? So it's start building the team, start hiring, delivering projects, and go from idea to execution.
Okay.
So it was a typical transformation where you want to create the data, team data capabilities inside an organization.
Gotcha. So where were the toughest bottlenecks in that process? Because I know that depending on the organizational context, it can be anywhere really, but what was the most difficult and challenging aspect for you?
I think in most of transformations, not only this one at Danone, you have some leaders that see where you need to go and they believe, but then you also need to keep convincing the rest of the organization. And you always need to prove it, right? You always need to keep reminding on the value of what you're doing, why you're doing it. And it's very easy to say, oh, I already explained once why we need to do this. Well, you need to keep explaining and again and show the value and remind again. And don't assume that because you talk once to a big manager or to a vice president, it's enough, right? You need to keep showing it and at all levels of the organization. So I think that communication part is really important, right? Because we, as more technically oriented people, we think if the solution is technically elegant, if we're pushing the state of the art of the organization, is enough. Well, no, you need to share the knowledge, get the people on board, get them excited. And we don't always think about that, right? Like we just go and, we need to start building a data lake, we need to start doing some machine learning, and it's cool. But the communication part is very important.
So you're a seasoned professional, right? You work with many organizations. Because this keeps coming up, of course. This is why we even have the brand name now, the Data Storytellers. So it used to be the innovation community, but now with the Data Storytellers. Storytelling is obviously a buzzword, but underneath what you have, storytelling is communication. It is about convincing people, moving people with stories. It's about getting them to see the world in another way, in a new way, and getting them to act differently. So turning every head in the right direction. Communication. What have you seen as the biggest pitfalls in communication for data executives in large companies? Can you maybe shine a light on that? What do you think are those things that usually are not good practice, and some of the pitfalls that usually happen when you are trying to engage key stakeholders?
We often think data analytics, AI, IT professionals, we always focus on, okay, this is the right way of doing it. And because I see it, everybody sees it. But if I go to a marketeer, somebody from finance department, somebody from procurement, and I just tell how beautiful my plan is and how technically sound it is, they don't care, right? So you need to always answer the question they have in their mind, what is in it for me? And that's where you need to start, right? So, okay, this is going to enable you to do this, right? Why do you need to work on cleaning the data? Why do you need to have data governance? Why do you need to do things like this? Well, because this is the return, right? This is in it for you. Now you're going to do these things. You can do this use case. Now you can spend more time on this instead of on that. You need to show it, right? It's not just because, the architect draws it and it's fantastic and you get excited about the technical solution, right? So I think that part of trying to relate it to what it is for the end user, for your colleagues, for the other employees in the company, that's what matters.
And when you're trying to understand what matters to these people, because that's the other thing, right? That you can have your own ideas, about what they should care about or what you can offer. So how do you go about understanding and exploring that? I mean, how have you done this over your career? Are you a fan of maybe independent research in the company, or are you the kind of guy who likes to sit down with people and pick their brains directly?
There are different ways of going about it, and there's not a single one. So things you could try to do, for instance, is shadow somebody, right? Like say, okay, let me just come a couple of days, see how you work, and then I understand what is important for you, what is not, how you spend your time, or how complex it is, right? And you need to understand a process, and you better see it. So that shadowing you could do. Like sometimes it's good to visit certain things, right? Like we were doing some network analytics on networks, right? Like internet networks. Well, you go to the command center where they monitor all the network, right? And you see, okay, you visualize this. This is what you track. This is who's involved. Fine. Let me go see a piece of hardware in the network that provides internet. Okay, now I see that, I understand it, right? So that's one way. Another way that I found useful in some projects is to have a product owner. So imagine you're working on a project that you need to deliver a data product, be it, I don't know, a dashboard, an algorithm, a whole pipeline with software at the end that, okay, needs to address a business need. But you find a product owner that is in the business side that is currently doing a similar work, and you say, now you're a product owner, and you are the one saying, this is how I work, this is important, this is not. And then we just try to model what you do, but in analytics with algorithms, with data pipelines, right? So having grab somebody from the business and become the product owner, in some cases it works very well, because that person is doing currently the job in an inefficient way that you're trying to improve, right? With analytics. That helps a lot, because, well, you don't need to be imagining, right? That person is telling you how the work is. So that went very well. Another trend that I've seen the last years, and I also have in my teams, are analytics translators. So it's another role. I started with data scientists as the sexiest job in the 21st century. Analytics translators. The way we define them are those people that they come from the business side, but they have a clear affinity for digital, for analytics, for facts and figures, for good processes, for automation, for creating efficiencies. And they have that mindset, right? And what we leverage is the knowledge of the business, let's say procurement, or somebody that is an expert in marketing. We say, well, you're in charge of talking to everybody there, and to have a sense of all their needs and their challenges, and then start work with them into scoping some of those needs into something we can do, right? But build a relationship. Go have a coffee, talk to them, join their strategy discussions, do brainstormings. And like that, after several rounds of working with a team in this way, or with a department, then you start really getting a grasp of what's important to them, where they're going, and how can data, analytics, AI bring them there, right? So that role of the analytics translator into building the bridges, the governance, the dynamics between the data team and the business team is also very useful.
If you look at leadership here, so this role of the analytics translator, I find it super exciting, because this keeps coming up, right? And it really strikes the heart of the issue with the communication bottleneck between business and data. It's a language barrier, really. Now, do you experience a lot of resistance usually when these analytics translators are deployed in these business units? Any kind of friction that comes from people not really willing to engage with that data, not being interested in it, not being bought into it, not being inspired by it? What is your experience?
I think it follows, like, people in organizations, they follow this distribution that is this curve of how people adopt technologies and innovations. And you have there, the super early adopters, the middle mass, the laggards. You have them everywhere. And you will also find the super early adopters. So we also found those that say, hey, we're going to do analytics. I say, I have 3 ideas. Okay, all the projects with you. And we were done. Well, I have 5 more ideas. The ideas were always coming from the same team, the same people, right? Because those are the early adopters. Then you make them successful, you go to the next one and to the next one, right? There's always those that say it will never work. Mm-hmm. Data is a mess. It will take forever. I cannot trust this. Whatever excuse, right? So, well, you don't start with those. You start with the ones that are willing, made them successful. Then other people that were in the boundary, okay, I'm looking from the fence. Should I do this or not? I'm going to try. You try again. Some of them are people successful, and you have more, sponsors, more fans, more success stories, and then the ball gets rolling. You should just not try to start with the most difficult one. I think that's been a learning, both in my scientific career, short one as a PhD graduate, but also here is you need to get early results fast. And the low-hanging fruit, go with the one that is most willing, that has the easiest project to get started, start there. And then you have a bit more trust, but also you kind of earn your license to operate to then try to aim for more complex ones, more transformational ones, right? Because you're not going to change the whole technology backbone from day one. So you give them a bit of successes to believe more and say, now let's go for a bigger one and a bigger one.
Gotcha. This low-hanging fruit, the quick early win, again, it's a recurring pattern and a common insight. Again, you are a seasoned professional. From your experience and perspective, how do you identify a good project to start with? How do you see that something will actually be a quick win and it will also have an impact? How do you do that?
So I try that my teams, they follow a process, right? So we say, okay, first brainstorming, ideation, collecting ideas without filtering them much. And then those ideas, try to assess them in a couple of dimensions, business impact and feasibility. So, okay, do I have the data? Is the data available? Can I access it immediately? Is it complete? Okay, looks good. Does it have value? Yes, go for it, right? If you, for instance, don't have the data, so you still need to generate it, or you need to implement the system that will generate data for you, well, it becomes more difficult, right? So we try to look at business ideas, needs, at least in those 2 dimensions. Now, we don't just say, is this valuable? And then the business person says, sure, it's very valuable to me. No, you need to put a number. And I want you to write it down, right? So we bring a template with the business case to actually describe in words, this is the challenge, this is what we need, this is the request, this is what we're going to build, this is the expected value of it. Are we going to create so many millions of savings? Are we going to increase so much of sales, so much percentage of conversion in a campaign, what have you? Write it down, and you need to back it up. You need to be behind this number. You need to support it, and we're going to go for it, right? Now, you start with those that you say, okay, yeah, here I have big money, but it seems I need to mobilize half of my internal IT. Could become difficult. Here I'm self-sufficient. I already have the data. In a month and a half, I have a prototype that validates the business case. And in another month and a half, I'm delivering money. Okay, we go for that. So I like those that even if it's not huge value, you can go fast at them. Because one of the enemies I've seen lately, the whole my career is speed. So you just want to go really fast to test those ideas, and then, well, if they have their merit, then go really big, and that will take time.
Then scale, right? When it works on a smaller scale. So
and that's a change. That's a change, because most of the organizations, they associate data projects to IT projects, and IT projects should not fail. It's an investment. It needs to work. You're going to deploy a new ERP, or you're going to create a data lake. Well, it better work. You don't just fail it and learn from the lessons. But with AI, with the data, you need to try. You don't know. Is it predictable? Well, I don't know. I'll try to make a model, see if there is signal in there in that noise. If it's predictable, and maybe you have a nice forecast, but perhaps not. But I need to try. The key there is, well, try cheaply and quickly, and have plenty of ideas. So if you have plenty of things to try, does not work, you have more to move on, and once you hit the jackpot, then you scale and go big. But it's a mind shift, because people don't like that uncertainty. They're used to know, okay, I'm going to put so much money, it's going to take 12 months, and then it works. And I say, well, we're going to try, maybe it does not work. So we'll need to go to drawing board again. It's a mind shift, and it's not very comfortable for some people, but others, they really like that freshness, that agility, that quickly seeing things, because people find it also the old way of doing IT projects very stifling, very 6 months of scoping, 12 to 18 months delivery. You don't get energy out of that, right? So I think the new generations really appreciate these new ways of working that data or digital benefit from.
It brings some excitement and dynamism. At the same time, you guys, data leaders, are pioneers in these businesses. So you're also running the risk of getting invested in something that just won't work out. How do you control expectations in the business? Do you have a best practice for that?
Controlling expectations. I don't know. It's a good one. I think you need to, because if you paint it so uncertain, it can be scary. But if you present, but I'm following a process. I mean, I have a process for doing this, right? It's phase 1, phase 2, ideation, prototyping, validating, second MVP, then scaling up. Okay, well, there's some logic to this, right? And within that, if you follow the process, we can come quickly to the result that is value, or we stop it. Or I think that gives a bit more confidence, having a bit of a methodology. Because if you give the impression you're just a bunch of crazy programmers somewhere there, a bit disconnected, delusional, then it gets scary. So I think that having a methodology helps a bit. And perhaps that's a bit of the intangibles, right? Like when you're doing this assessment of the idea of the project you're going to be working on, of the solution, you also sense how comfortable people are, right? So, okay, we assess for value, we assess for feasibility, but we also say, okay, are our stakeholders, our partners, our product owner comfortable with this? Or we see this is going to explode after 2 weeks because it's not for them, right? So you also sense that, and well, try to do a good match, right? Like in some projects, you can quickly create something a bit visual, and that's nice because people understand. But some projects require a lot of working in the back end, in the pipeline, cleaning the data, preparing the infrastructure. That is not visual. That is work that needs to be done, but you cannot nicely demo it, right? Well, if you have a stakeholder that is a bit uncertain, don't start with a project that requires a lot of background work, because not going to see anything and it's going to say, well, time is passing by, nothing happens. Start with a project that delivers something visual. You can do a quick analysis, you can do a little quick dashboard, something to show outcome. Prioritize those for those that feel a bit more uncomfortable or a bit more uncertain.
So ultimately what you're trying to build as well is, of course, trust, but also you need to take care of the reputation of the whole data initiative within the company, and you're trying to build up influence as well to get more and more buy-in, right, along the way. So
yes.
How important do you think partnerships and relationships are in this long term? Are you strategic about building partnerships within the business, or are you just relying more on the success of your projects and let that social influence take care of itself as you go along?
Yes, I think everything is it's a bit like a negotiation as well. Like one way for us to be successful is, okay, we have projects, deliver money, savings, more sales, what have you. So that's one way. But end of the day, my view is most of the data teams are service teams. We are not owners of a P&L. We are not the ones making the sales. We need to present an insight, an opportunity, but somebody else needs to act on that, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to remember that, you know, you are not the rainmaker there. In most of the traditional companies, right? I mean, if you are in Google and you are the algorithm, programming the algorithms to optimize the ads, yes. But traditional large corporations, you present the insight, the opportunity, somebody needs to act. I can make a prediction of this campaign is going to work. This client has propensity to buy this or not, but somebody needs to go make the sales pitch. Somebody needs to convince that customer, right? So it's not me. That service mentality is important because you need to be helping the others. And you need to be, as data professional, be there, giving, to build a trust, right? And examples, I always try to leave a bit of bandwidth in the teams so they can work on small ad hoc things to earn that rapport, you know, to create that relationship. Hey, can you help me? Yes, I'll do a quick extract, a little graph, and I'll send you over to you. I'll make some quick calculations. I'll send you the numbers. It's half an hour. Do it. Still focus also on the big projects, right? And the ones that are going to deliver the value. So create that by goodwill, by sharing with people. But another way is look out there, right? So who are you need to influence. So in some cases, you have the data team here and sometimes IT over there. Sometimes you are inside, right? So see how you can also facilitate for others, right? So if I know, in my case, I'm trying to work closely with IT for things around, I don't know, data governance. So data is one of the big topics in IT. We need to create proper data governance, catalogs, you know, data owners, data stewards, all these things. Well, hey, let me bring that to my function. Let me bring that to procurement. So you can test it here. Let me mobilize the people so we can do it. Now, I think it's good to do, right? But I'm also trying to facilitate IT. So later on, together with IT, we can build bigger things, right? Or our teams try to volunteer for new things, right? When we're testing our new data platform, I'll bring you good use cases. Or we're testing a new tooling for something. Let me find a use case for that, right? So you can always try to help others in that sense. It's not only your function or the business. You can also work with IT, work with HR, you know, go work with HR and design some training, some digitalization.
Okay, that makes sense. And then it's interesting you mentioned that you are a support function. So you're not the rainmakers. You are giving people guidance and insights, and it's up to them if they will act on it. Of course, if you do your job well, then it's not just that you have powerful insights, but you also can convince them and influence them and move them to act on that. Fine. So what is your success actually measured on? Because I know it can change from organization to organization, those KPIs, but if you want to like really go down to the heart of being a data leader, what are you moved by and what is your team motivated by? Why should you do your job better? And what are the tangible outcomes and metrics that you can actually point to that, hey, I did my job well as a data leader and these are the results?
Oh, there are two things, right? Like one is what your company might evaluate you on in order for you to get a good end of year, you perform well, you achieve your goals, maybe you make a bonus or not. Another is also what motivates individuals. So I'll park that one for a second. Well, there are the hard things and the how is it, like the perception, right? So if my manager or the CDO or CIO or whoever is up there hears from plenty of people, all these analytics does not work. It does not work. Too complex or too slow, or I don't get meaningful insights. And people keep repeating that. Well, there goes your evaluation, right? Well, then you need to, that's why I mean, if you're a service mentality, you reduce that problem as well, right? Because, oh, no, yeah, very helpful. Oh, yeah, it works. Nice insights. The other is, simply you put some hard numbers. So I'm going to deliver so many million savings with my project. I'm going to identify so many savings opportunities or so much sales, right? You just need to make sure that you have enough pipeline of projects that could move the needle there, right? So that's one way. Is that a bit what you're...
Absolutely. And I really like it because... Yeah, absolutely. Because it's so easy. If you look at sales, right? Like what's sales measured on? Well, the number is like black and white on the board. There's a bottom line. Even with marketing, you can do that, even though in the case of marketing, sometimes you have correlation, but it's hard to point to the causation. So what I'm trying to get is really getting into the psychology of the work here. Of course, I got many different takes on this from different data leaders, but it's interesting for me to ask, like, what is your motivational pull here? And also, how do you leverage the fact that you actually help someone in the business, and it's not always clear that what you've done had a direct impact on that? And how do you tell that story internally as well? Right. So, have you given this much thought in the past of, okay, look, we've done something well here. How do I communicate this within the business? How do I create a success story from this that will clearly demonstrate that data is doing an excellent job in the business and it's worth investing in?
Okay. So I got a couple of examples. One is in some company I was working, we used to have every month digital demo afternoon, right? Like so all the teams would demo things. Well, there you would show your projects, and happens sometimes some big shot comes by, listen what's going on, and they get mesmerized by that data project right there. And it's kind of this right place, right moment, right? The day that the big boss was looking at our project, that we've been there every month presenting stuff, that week was the right project for that person, right? And then boom, it just takes a life of its own, and the project ends up becoming its own department almost after the years. Another one is, like I said before, just to showcase the success, right? And it's not just only me. So we had a project where we need to implement some technology to clean up a lot of data and to build some nice analytics and reporting on top. But there's a huge work on cleaning the data. But needs to get done. And it needs to be done by the different teams, the different experts at global and regional level in the company, because sometimes you need to have a global knowledge, but sometimes you need to know the action that is happening in Brazil, and you need to have somebody from Brazil to clean up that data. So it's joint effort. Now, some people put more effort than others. Well, when we have an example of somebody that did brilliant, that they organized, like they treat it as a project, we're going to say this next 6 months in our region, we're going to do this, boom, boom. And after that, we have a perfect data set, perfect insights, and we're going to squeeze all the juice out of this data. Now we take the people in the lead in that region, and we just show them, and we bring them to the town halls where the whole company is. We showcase them. We say, here are the highlights, but we're going to do an in-depth session so you can also do it the same in your region. That's how you create that kind of sharing the successes, but it's also not us, it's the end user saying, I did this and it was fantastic, right? So that's also a way of communicating.
Okay. No,
That I've seen. So a lot of
that's great.
demos, and sometimes people see the right message, and otherwise just show the success of your clients, not of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And making people look good, right? That's also an important part of building good partnerships. I hear this a lot. Like, you just got to focus on making people look good, and then it will actually return to you.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. Then, so we talked a lot about the actual communications aspect, KPI, storytelling. So of course, when you are driving a project or you are at the head of a data initiative in the company, you are in a leadership position. You've been in multiple companies now in senior roles. What do you think is the right leadership posture? I know it's a big question, right? So let me specify this a little bit. A lot of times, the question of being assertive and being humble comes up. Or should you be very patient, or should you just really go all guns blazing with urgency and push for results? Or even, should you draw really hard boundaries around ownership, both within data and projects, or should you be more, laissez-faire and let the creative juices flow and natural collaboration to emerge? So, from your experience, what are the key leadership virtues that actually work and make people receptive to whatever you're trying to achieve?
And is it leadership towards my own team or towards my colleagues, stakeholders, partners?
Great question, because leadership has many faces, right? So actually, you could expand on both, because this is actually a great insight that you might have to have a different posture depending on who you're facing, right? So if you can expand on that would be super helpful.
I think towards my own team, or what I try to do is, I work for the team, right? So I work in a French company, and everybody calls, oh, this is your boss, this is your boss. And I feel a bit like the shivers of somebody calling me, you are my boss. So, no, well, I don't know. We're in the same team. I'm the lead of the team, but we're the team. I'm not the boss, right? So that mentality that is, we're here to make the team successful, right? And this is a change I saw when transitioning from hands-on or individual contributor in data and AI to just taking care of teams that do this, right? There's people, and myself also, always struggle like, oh no, but I'm losing my edge, I need to be coding. And my way of looking at it is, but do I need to do it myself? Do I need to create the thing myself with my hands, or am I happy with the team creating it, right? Yeah, I'm happy with the team creating it. I like to see that. Okay, let me facilitate that, right? Let me use my experience, my knowledge, my influence to create the ingredients, the environment, so this team can deliver this good stuff. So I think if you have that mentality, is good. I am there to work for the team. I just, every now and then, I believe a leader still needs to say, no, well, I think now we're going out of track. Now this is how we're going to do it. But very rarely, because if you're always like that, that you don't let people develop their own ideas, have ownership, right? So you need to really dose that, and only when it's really going sideways. But for the rest, just be there to support them, create facilities for them, and I don't know, try to push them a little bit more and give them opportunities. So I think that kind of humble is very, everybody says I need to be humble, but it's more like you're there to work for the team, not for yourself. And also, if you need to partner, right? Like, do you always need to care that is your team the all the time the star of the show, or can you share success with other people, right? So if our analytics team, my analytics team is never in the spotlight, okay, it's bad, but I don't always need to be there, right? So it can be my partners in IT, or can be my business stakeholder that tells the story, or the product owner, and not myself, right? So that's how you can also share a bit the success, and it's that kind of mentality that is not only you doing the cool things. It could be your team, it could be in partnership with somebody, and I give them credit as well.
If it will have better energy. And then when you're facing your stakeholders or senior members of the company, are you more like okay, let's kick down some doors and get some stuff done type of attitude? Do you think that works? Because in some organizations I've seen that that's what they require, and somewhere actually a very soft and almost timid approach, sometimes it's more valuable. What is your style?
Well, I think it's also like you said before, you need to modulate that and adjust to different settings, right? So if you have a stakeholder that is very confrontational, well, you should not just go confrontational, right? You should not mirror that. You should just change your energy. I believe it's a bit like also at an individual level, right? So you need to be nice, and we're a service team, so I need to be helpful, right? But there's a moment that if people take our team or myself or analytics for granted, or, well, one time is okay, second time is okay, but the third time not anymore. And then I'm going to draw a line, right? So some people say, oh, no, we have an analytics team. Fantastic, they're going to do work for me. And they start asking for things, and we work, and that leads to nothing, leads to no success, no improvement, nothing. Well, I can try a couple of times. Third time, I'm not going to pick up the phone. Then I'm going to be more assertive, right? So you always need to find also those boundaries. At the end, you work, it's teamwork, right? You're not going to move the needle if you just go kicking doors and saying, I'm here, the cowboy, and everybody listen to me. Yeah, you don't create alliances, right? So it's teamwork. You need to create those networks. And you succeed together. You're not going to succeed alone. So you need to be very careful with that a very aggressive attitude, and only keep it for just a couple of times in your tenure.
Yeah, keep your powder dry. No, that makes sense. Julio, these were great insights. Thank you very much. Just quickly, what are you most excited about right now? Just we're moving into the decade of data, right? It's all these catchphrases about data being the new oil. It's being thrown around. Everyone kind of feels that in this, when you have an opportunity like this, it's almost like gold rush, right? And there will be a lot of losers and quite a few winners who take it all. So what are you most excited about right now in the data world? It can be a trend, it can be a technology. What excites you?
I have different things because I don't know. I'm not going to point a single one. I always have a lot of trouble pointing one single the best thing. I'll give you a couple of hints. So on the technology side, I really like the beautiful, elegant solutions, right? So if you watch, for instance, some presentations of Dr. Karpathy, the lead of AI in Tesla, when he explains how they do deep learning, how they collect the data, all the challenges they're having. When he presents the choices they make, we need to go here, we choose for that, technical decisions, you see, okay, that's state of the art, that's beautiful, right? So I find it very exciting, for instance, that example of a company that is creating a car, but it's also will create new business models based on the data and AI behind that have nothing to do with selling ads, right? So they're creating a whole new business model enabled by data, starting as a car company, but they're going to be whatever, a taxi company, insurance company, that will resell their software. That was not the initial business model of a car company. So I like to see those examples, how new business models are created thanks to data. And also the technology behind that is very elegant. Mm-hmm. That's one. Still, these are kind of the highlights, right? Like those poster companies that look fantastic. I also just like to see in my own realm how just simple data, simple analytics can move the needle for normal corporations. You don't need to be based in Silicon Valley to benefit from this, right? So I really like, for instance, the mission of Danone into of improving the planet. Like, we have so many farms, agriculture contribute to the warming of this planet, to CO2 emissions. So we have a huge impact, but we also have a huge opportunity, right? We provide food to a lot of people, so you can improve health of people via our products, right? We've been existing for more than 100 years as a company, so there's a lot catching up. But just with a little bit of data, a bit of analytics, a bit of AI, you can move the needle in these companies also a lot and help them achieve their mission, right? Deliver on our promise. So that's also nice. You know, there are some companies that say, I support this company, I hope it does not disappear. Well, data can support this company as well. So that I also get excited, you know, like how every regular company out there could benefit from this. It's not only for the Teslas or the Facebooks of this world. So it's kind of two things, right? Really, the state of the art is beautiful, but the normal data analytics project in a normal company is also beautiful to see.
It's such a good point what you mentioned about impacting the planet, because one of the emerging topics that I see, and I think it's still underappreciated, is data ethics. Right, it's becoming more and more important now with data ethics. I know that you guys usually are not data ethicists. It's a kind of an emerging position and role, but we can already see that there's a huge opportunity in leveraging data ethics to improve the perception of data within the company, because you can use that to demonstrate what are the risks in this and kind of get ahead of that trend and ahead of that narrative. What is your take on this? How important do you think data ethics will become? And maybe this can be our final point that you can share some thoughts on, because you've been in the business for a while. The question of data ethics and the opportunities and risks of businesses right now moving into this decade.
That's I don't know if I'm going to give it a different take, because the usual data ethics, you know, that you should not profile people, you should not. The data sets you use to train your models will include the biases that we already have in society. So those AI models are replicating our biases and discrimination to perpetuate them or make them even worse. That's what everybody is talking about. Now, I'll tell you another aspect of data ethics. If I'm in a company that I claim that I'm going to help to reduce CO2 emissions like we claim in Danone, is it ethical not to use data to try to reduce your CO2 emissions? Is it ethical not to start measuring what you're doing to actually prove it, that what you say you're set out to achieve is true? I'm going to create regenerative agriculture so our farmers capture CO2. I'm going to reduce emissions. Okay, you can prove it with data. So I would say if you're not proving with data, probably you're being unethical. And you're not touching privacy of consumers or anything. It's just prove it with data. You can. If you're not doing it, why is that?
That's actually a great point. This is a good example of reframing data ethics as well, and then turning it into an advantage. So that was great, Julio. I know that we arrived at the end of the hour, so thank you for the great insights. Any final word of advice for aspiring data leaders based on your career so far? What do you think that are the most important things to keep in mind if you want to succeed in this field?
Let's go with be humble. Let's just always try to learn. And don't get desperate by the speed things are changing. There will always be things to do. The field will always evolve. There will be new technologies, new algorithms. Somebody will be doing the coolest thing. Don't just get disappointed that because that one is doing the cool thing, you're already lagging behind. There's so much to do. It's endless, the opportunities. So just focus on developing your talents, keep working, be humble. celebrate when you have some project, some engagement, some company that is doing exciting things. Sometimes you're doing more boring things. Just keep pushing. Like I said, a lot of companies, a lot of initiatives, NGOs deserve to use data and analytics to deliver on what they promise, and you can contribute to that. So that would be my take. Just keep going. And I think it was Jeff Bezos said it's still day one. It feels, AI was going, I don't know, in the 40s, and we're still here, and it still feels like we're just starting. So just enjoy the ride.
Fantastic. That's a great note to finish on. Julio, it's been a pleasure, sir. Hope to get your insights maybe in a few months, few years as well, to reflect on your journey.
Yes, exactly. Thanks a lot, Lazo, for having me. Thanks, Data Storytellers. It was a pleasure.